Everybody, I'm your host, John Bell, and this is Braven Bushcraft. I'd apologize to some of the fans. This is a newer channel for me, and I haven't been pumping it a lot, mostly because of my other channel, Harbinger Report. It takes up a lot of my time. But also, my intention for this channel is I do want to do gear review and stuff, but I don't want to just sit in the desk all the time in my office. I want to be able to be out in the woods shooting, kind of more bushcraft videos, ideally, and also some gear review with that as well. But I have to move locations in order for that to happen. So even though I've been kind of preparing and building up for this channel, and I've spent like the last year buying gear and equipment to review, I've got more to come in the future, and I'm in the process of trying to move so that I will have a better location to be able to shoot more bushcraft content. So until then, it's just some gear review stuff. And that brings us to the topic today of JK boots. I'm going to switch my camera angles here so you've got a better view. All right. This is how this started. Have you seen the television cable series of The Last of Us? It was a pretty amazing little series on, like, kind of like a zombie apocalypse thing. And coincidentally, I was looking for boots. I'm a gear junkie, especially when it comes to anything that's like survival gear or even just hardcore gear for, specific purposes or whatever. I found out that in that television series, they used Rose Anvil's boots, okay, that he designed. Rose Anvil, a boot maker that works with other brand name boot makers to make special kind of one-off designs. And he does a fantastic job of that, and he's really popular, and you can find a lot of his videos online discussing that. Well, he came out with this, survival boot that they featured in that television series, The Last of Us. I believe it was HBO production. But something else that's really interesting about that little side tangent is instead of being a zombie virus, which really is, kind of prevalent in pop culture, that show did a different take where it was a zombie fungus as opposed to a virus, which is very interesting. On my show, The Harbinger Report, I talk about how I've got two sources with military personnel that were high-level military contractors, and both of them claimed that there was an actual real zombie fungus, not virus, but fungus, that our government has access to. So if you want to hear more about that high creepy strangeness, go check out the Harbinger Report. But back to this. So in The Last of Us, Rose Anvil had designed these boots as kind of like apocalyptic style boots that, if you had one pair to survive on, that's the kind of thing you'd want to have. And again, I recommend going to check out some of his shows. Just look him up, Rose Anvil, on YouTube, right? But anyway, he came up with so I was like, by the time I found out about that, the boots weren't available anymore because that's right up my alley. But he did another run of boots that he called the bear boots. And it essentially was much like this. It was a bison boot made of bison leather, okay, which is what you see here. Now, on Rose Anvil's boots, though, it had the rough side out, okay, and the smooth side was on the inside. This particular boot is smooth side out, rough side inside, right? Now, there's some advantages to having the rough side out. And that is the fibers resist scratching tears on the rough side a lot better, and it's much stronger than and more scratch and tear resistant than the smooth side, which will end up showing marks and scrapes and stuff like that. So that's a new trend you'll be seeing in a lot of boots now. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out. So I ordered those boots like last January, the January of 2024, I believe it was. It was a while back now. And I just got the boots finally around September time, I believe. And I loved them. They were fantastic boots. Now, Rose Anvil worked with a company called JK Boots. All right. And that's what this is. This is from JK Boots. Okay. And JK Boots is a phenomenal Northwest part of the country boot maker. Okay. And they specialize in boots for Northwest outdoorsmen, specifically loggers, and also a lot of their firefighters, the woodland firefighters. Also, there's three main brands of boots that they prefer, all pretty much the same style made boot, which is not this one. And I'll describe that more. But it's the same style from three different well-known companies. You've got Nick's, White's, and then JK Boots. All right, and JK Boots is making a big impact on the scene. A lot of people that choose those three styles, a lot of them just rave about the JK Boots, and I'm still really starting to understand why. I have not had any experience with the Whites or the Nick's boots, so just to throw that out there. And I bought these. JK did not give me these boots. I did pay for these myself, although I'm sending these back, and I'll explain that why. Even though this is one of my most favorite pair of boots I've ever laid eyes on, I am sending it back. But that's because I've got specific needs, and unfortunately, as nice of a boot as this is, it just doesn't fit those needs, my requirements. Not because of anything lacking in this boot. This boot is, like I said, one of the best, well-made. The craftsmanship's excellent, outstanding. It really is one of the best boots I've ever seen. And I just think, too, it's one of the most absolute beautiful boots I've ever seen in my lifetime. And it's extremely comfortable. But like I said, I'll get into why it doesn't fit my specific needs and why I'm unfortunately forced to send it back. But getting back to the boots. So Rose Anvil made a design from the JK boots that he called the Bear Slayers. And they were completely the inside out rough finished design. Okay. Which was really nice. They're amazing, gorgeous, beautiful boots. And I love them. Unfortunately, and I really wanted a pair of Rose Anvil's products. Unfortunately, the boots were the wrong size when I got them. They just weren't wide enough. I have pretty wide feet. And so they just weren't wide enough. And they were really constricting me in the arch and in the width of the boot. So I was forced to have to return the Bear Slayers and get a second pair of boots. And so that's where I got this pair. I replaced them. I would have loved to have had a pair of those Rose Anvils, but unfortunately, there's such a demand for these JK custom-made boots, and these are custom-made boots, which is they're all handmade. They still use some very old-style machinery to facilitate making them, but these are, in fact, handmade boots. These are not production line boots, and because of that, the quality is just exquisite. All right, it sets it apart from anything else out there. All right, for a number of reasons. But anyway, quality being the first. But that said, so I had to send back the Bear Slayers, and there's a production line right now. Think of it like a 9 to 11 weeks in order for you to order a pair of their boots to get them for their production time and then get them shipped out. So it's quite a bit of time. And I really didn't want to have to wait. I've waited since January to get my Bear Slayers. So I didn't want to have to wait again for another pair of good boots. So I looked at what else JK had available. Now, what's interesting is I really didn't know much about JK. I was just looking at the Rose Anvil boots. But when I started looking into JK boots, I was highly, highly impressed. And these are built very, very similar to Rose Anvil style. Of course, he puts his little own personal take on it, which is nice. But these are still built very much in the same style, which is why Rose Anvil went to JK in the first place. He's gone to, by the way, he's gone to several boot manufacturers to help with his designs and collaborative projects, which is phenomenal. And one thing I love about Rose Anvil is he's saying he's not trying to, take over an existing market. He's trying to build up the whole market. And that's one of the reasons why he goes to different manufacturers for different style boots. And I think that's phenomenal. That's a great thing. Rise and ship raises all, a raising tide rises all ships. That's the way I look at it. Just like content providers. Some content providers get really angry if you start doing content on what they believe they own, But my idea is we should all be working together, So similar style for what I'm trying to accomplish with my show is what Rose Anvil does with his boots. And he's a gifted guy with that, and he's entertaining, and he gives a lot of good information. So again, check him out. But also check out JK Boots, because they are just a phenomenal boot company. I found this pair of Bison Boots, and I really didn't like the inside flesh out. I like the smooth side just for my own personal preference. In fact, I wrote to Rose Anvil and asked, even in some of their prototypes that were smoothed out, if there was any way I could access and buy one of those, because I really prefer that. I just like the look of the smooth out versus the roughed out. Okay. But that's until later when I realized how the roughed out actually is so much more actually protective of the boot itself. So if you're really going to do something to have like a work boot in a work boot environment or a wilderness environment where your boots just get ripped to shreds, especially in the wilderness, having that rough side out makes a huge difference, and actually is a brilliant idea. In fact, most of JK's boots now are designed where the lower part of the leather is made out in that roughed out design, expressly for that one purpose of just being so much more resistant. And another thing too, if you don't like the roughed out flesh look, like I really don't care for, I like the smooth look. Once you properly oil and wax these things and coat them properly, according to JK's recommendations, Rose Anvil also does videos on that you should check out. Once you apply those things to it, it actually smooths the leather out to where it looks smooth out, which is quite interesting. It lays all those fibers down to where it looks smooth, and over time will take more and more as you continue to clean them and condition them, which you should do with your boots. But there's kind of an art to it. You don't want to condition them too often, and you certainly don't want to leave them unconditioned when they need to be cleaned and conditioned, especially if you're using it as a work boot, especially if you're using it in the wilderness, okay, which can be very hard on it. Dust, things like that, they need to be brushed off regularly. You don't want to leave caked on stuff on them, and it's very important to keep the leather supple. These boots will last you, for a very long time, if not forever, if you take good care of them. And they're designed in such a specific way. Notice the stitching here is on the outside trim of the boot instead of coming up underneath like a lot of boot manufacturers do. That makes this very easy to help replace these soles. So in time, you'll wear the soles out and need to replace them. But the boot in the leather, as long as you keep it conditioned properly, can last you a very long time. This is a closer up video. Now, this particular leather is Bison, all right? And I love the Bison leather because the Bison, first of all, look at how it marbles. See how the leather marbles, which, by the way, adds to the break-in process and the comfortability of these boots, because it's already kind of pre-naturally designed for these crease points, right? And so what's amazing about that is, first of all, look at the look of that. That looks like it's dinosaurs. The first thing I think of when I see this is you're wearing a dinosaur hide, yeah, which I think is just cool, and I think it's sharp looking. Also, I'm from Cajun, Louisiana, and a big thing down here is gators. And I have a pair of gator skin boots, which I love. And they look a lot like this. And it makes me feel like I'm wearing, something that's a part of my home, when I wear those boots. And so when I see these, it reminds me a lot of the gator skin. It just looks a lot like that. So I love it on that purpose as well. But yeah, to me, my first impression is it's like you're wearing dinosaur, boots, which is it's just kind of cool. But look at the craftsmanship on this thing. These things are exquisite. I mean, exquisitely made. Okay. Now here, this is a tongue guard. Okay. The tongue guard, this little thing looks like a Western lace-up cowboy boot. You see these really common. This is a tongue guard, tongue saver. This is a softer, different type of softer leather inside. And you want that for your comfort when you wear these things. And also, it's been pointed out by people, you want to make sure when you wear them, you fold the leather over to where it makes like an S to the inside. All right. Makes like almost a, see if I can get this on camera. See that little loop where it makes almost like a figure 8 or S? You want to do it that way because it gives you 3 layers of leather before you tighten up these laces. All right. And these are genuine leather laces. Okay. Which is really nice. You can also get synthetic laces, but the leather laces, I think, is a real nice treat. And you don't see enough of that anymore. I appreciate natural materials over a lot of man-made materials, or at least natural man-made materials. So that's important, but you want to fold this over so it creates basically 3 layers, all right, for when you lace these up. And that way it'll give you some more comfort and protection, especially if you're using these as work boots and everything else. But you have the little tongue guard. It just keeps that portion protected, keeps debris out of it, all right? So that's an important point. Also, you notice the sole on here. Look at the stitching that you've got on the bottom there. It's a Vibram sole. Many people are very familiar with that. Notice the screws in the heel cuff. All right. You can see the height of the heel right there. And you can also see the different layers that they use in the construction of this. All right. So now, as far as the soles, JK actually offers 3 different soles. All right. And they're very interesting. The first sole I'll mention is this one. This is called their honeycomb Vibram sole. And it's designed to be a softer wear sole to be more comfortable. It will not leave marks on floors. So if you work in an environment or in your house and you don't want black marks potentially that you can get from your work boots, this won't do that. This is the softest of their 3 soles that they offer. Okay. And it's just made to be more comfortable if you're using it as an everyday boot or if you just want a more comfortable work boot. All right. It's their softest sole. Now, being the softest sole, it will wear out the fastest. So there's the trade-off. So just keep that in mind. Okay. But it is comfortable. It is beautiful. It doesn't leave marks. It's an amazing, vibrant, well-proven sole. Okay. And I think it looks fantastic on these boots. I love these boots. I want to keep them. I really do. Speaking of why I'm not keeping, well, maybe I should go into the other soles. JK offers 2 other additional soles for the bottom of the boots. One is specifically, it's a black Vibram heat treated sole. Okay. Or I say heat treated, heat resistant is probably a better word. This designed for, like I said, we talked about the forestry boots, right? And a lot of the people in the forestry service that do the wildland firefighting, these guys, they love these boots. Like I said, from the 3 different manufacturers, including the really loved JK boots. They offer a black Vibram sole that is very, very heat resistant. Okay, very heat resistant. So if these guys have to fight wildland fires, they're going to be standing in a whole lot of ashes and heated materials that they're trying to squash. They're just forced in these environments. So they need natural materials, number one, to wear. And then they also need these heat resistant soles. But not only that, that's where even the leather strings come in, because these are naturally very heat resistant. They might not last as long. You certainly want to have a couple of pairs of these because in a heavy use environment, they can wear thin, they can snap, but they're very good in high heat environments. But it's good to have a few extra pairs of these on hand. I would always recommend. Okay. So now that's the second Vibram sole that JK offers. So the third Vibram sole, is also black, but it is made for their Arctic boots, which are basically an insulated version of their boots for cold weather. Now they offer two different versions of their Arctic boots. Okay. One version of their Arctic boots is basically rated down to about 0 degrees. So anywhere from normal to about 0 degrees. Okay. Then they have a Arctic 2 boot. That's the Arctic 1. They have an Arctic 2 boot that is rated for conditions below 0. Okay. I've worked in conditions where it's been 20 below. So, and a lot of times in those conditions, we use pack boots, which that brings me to mind something else. I would recommend, if from just past experience, if you're going to be in a very cold environment, better to have a slightly looser boot where you have a little more room in here. It will help keep if your toes are less constricted, they stay warmer. So that's why, you have gloves versus mitts, right? Gloves versus mitts are warmer than gloves. And the reason is you have more room and your fingers are together, where they're more constricted in a glove, where you've got individual, finger sleeves, right? So you're even though it's freer in a sense, they're each finger is more constricted and they can't share heat between each other. Whereas in a mitt, all your fingers are together, and you don't want your mitts tight either. Same thing. You want a little looseness in them because that air will heat up a little bit from your body temperature. It's like, I'm a scuba diver, and in scuba diving, you wear a neoprene suit, wetsuit. And what happens is that wetsuit fills up with water once you enter the water. Okay. But the heat from your body will heat that layer of water, which then insulates you from the outside colder temperatures. And that's how that works. Okay. Well, it's very similar when you are wearing mitts, even coats, and boots. You want to have a little bit of room in there that your body will heat up that air, and it actually provides a little bit of an insulation from the outside. A lot of people say, double up on socks and that kind of stuff, and you can do that, but that doesn't work for everybody. In fact, for me, instead of doubling up on socks, I'm not a giant fan of that because it constricts more. I would just prefer really condition this, and you properly wax it, as has been done for hundreds of years. This boot is almost every bit as good as wearing a fancy Gore-Tex boot, right? So that's an important thing to consider. I'm more and more and more in my journey, in my years, and that's something I'll talk about more on the channel, is transitioning away from all the fancy camping gear that you get in stores and returning back to just natural materials. Now, there is a trade-off. Natural materials tend to be heavier. Okay, so there's a trade-off there. But they also last much, much longer. Okay, they're tough. Even, to take it from a wildland fire standpoint, one thing I learned reading about wildland firefighters, which I've been doing a lot lately since learning about the JK boots, right? And their company, which is phenomenal. Please go check them out. They're not paying me to say that. I just love them. I love quality. And I'll tell you this, Ron, side tangent from my side tangent. I'll tell you this, from a survival bushcraft perspective, they talk about the number one tool is a knife/axe. And that is absolutely true in the world of survival and bushcraft. Okay. In fact, there are old stories of Indian braves. All right. And I love Indians. I'm part Cherokee Indian myself. So, even though I don't identify as an Indian, because it's a smaller portion of my genes, I still have a high respect and love for Indian culture, the good parts. There are negative parts, but you know what? There's good and negative parts of every culture, especially, Anglo-Saxon European culture as well. Take the good and put away the bad, right? There's a lot to love and that we can learn from different cultures. And and that's amazing. And the Indian culture is fascinates me. I absolutely love it. Part of it is because it is part of my DNA. It is part of my genes. Though a small part, it's still there, and that makes me want to learn about these people and from their perspective and what they went through and things like that. Like it was the Cherokees. The Cherokee, especially, very prevalent in this area of the southeast of the United States. In fact, they're big. It was in the Carolinas where they originated from mostly, but they traveled all over the Southwest, especially became one of the largest tribes at a time. And what's amazing is, it was the Battle of New Orleans that was the definitive final battle. 1 hour away from me, where I was born. I was born in New Orleans. All right, East Side, respect. So it was the Battle of New Orleans was the final decisive battle of the Revolutionary War to win the independence of the United States. Okay, under General Jackson. All right, that's why we've got Jackson Square in New Orleans, and of course some of the communist bastards ripped down some of the statues, saying that it's evil that he had nothing to do with slavery. He had nothing to do with slavery whatsoever. He won the War of Independence for the United States. All right, that he helped create the United States. All right, by winning our independence from Great Britain. All right. Now, some people will rightly argue that the war was really over before that battle, but communication wasn't the same as it is today, and we take that for granted. That battle was still a major battle and very important, and was decisive in the independence of the United States. It was the final nail in the coffin, all right, when we won the Battle of New Orleans. General Jackson was fighting trench warfare to win that battle. And right on his right and his left, what did he have? Cherokee Indians that were fighting with us for our independence. And sadly, after he became president, after being a war hero for winning our independence, he created the Trail of Tears, which forced many of the Cherokee off their lands and forced them to relocate to Oklahoma, all right, where they still have tribal lands today. And it's really sad because the Cherokee people, even though they helped win our country for us and fought side by side with us against the British, they suffered highly in that what became known as the Trail of Tears. And I think only 1 out of 4 even survived that march, that forced march and forced relocation, which is absolutely tragic and unjust to the Indian people. Also, something else people don't know, I've been to museums on the reservation in Oklahoma, and you know what I found? They had Bibles, Christian Bibles, written in Cherokee, word for word in Cherokee. So a lot of those were even converts to Christianity. And look how they were repaid by America for their help and their assistance and choosing to save us and fight alongside us. So it's just the Trail of Tears is just a tragedy, and the way that all the American Indian people have been treated, it's a tragedy. Anyway, getting off that soapbox, getting back to the JK boots, right? So the reason why I have to send these back is because they use the rawhide, a high quality rawhide, JK Boots does, for most of their boots. They've come out with this new Bison style, which is absolutely gorgeous and phenomenally beautiful. I love it. But one thing about Bison, even though it is a thicker leather, so that means it's more durable, all right, because it's thicker. It also is much softer leather, all right, than Tatanka. I have to say that. What was it called? Dances with Wolves was on. I was actually in the mountains this last week and looking for property to move to for doing a bushcraft channel and some other goals I have. I'm trying to do in the future, and I want a homestead, right? And work with a community of like-minded people that want to live off the land more and in natural ways that are healthy to the land and to the people and stuff like that. But anyway, the Dances with the Wolves was on TV while I was up there, and so all I had running through my head is Tatanka, Tatanka. But anyway, the bison, also a symbol of the American West, right? You can't get more Americana than cowboys, Indians in the Northwest, and bison, which is another reason I wanted bison leather. But even though the bison leather is a thicker leather than the cowhide, it is more supple. It is more soft. All right. So the break-in on the bison boots is a lot less than it is on the other. They're thicker, not thicker. These are thicker on their stronger. What's the right word I'm looking for? The cowhide takes more time to break in properly, whereas because this leather is so soft and supple, it takes much less time. But that also brings me to my one main problem with this boot. And it's in no way in part to JK Boots in any kind of way. This is just something to me personally and specifically. And that is, I have zero ankle support in this boot. I mean, look right here, how easily, that just folds over like it's nothing. It doesn't even take any pressure. Look how it squeezes up. You know what I mean? That's just not going to work for me because, like I said, I have to have boots that have stronger ankle support because I've got damage to my ligaments. I first injured them playing football in high school, and I injured them again in the military, doing road marches and stuff like that on uneven ground when I had, big rucksacks on my back, and you're carrying things like the hog, the Rambo gun, right? The M60. But anyway, yeah, I went through infantry school at Fort Benning, Georgia. Hua. But anyway, so I have to have boots that have ankle support. There's absolutely no point in me having a boot if I don't have ankle support. And these aren't even broke in yet. I've only tried them on a few times, but my ankle has full mobility and rotation in this. So it just, even laced up, it just does not work for me. And it brings me to tears because I love this boot. I have never seen a more beautiful boot in my lifetime than this. I just love it. Also, I love natural brown too. They make a lot of their boots are black. I'm not a big fan of that. A lot of the workers and even the jump crews like that, because think about it, if you're in ash and all the time, it makes sense to have black boots and work boots. But I love natural. I love the natural color, even though you could say this is, darkened or whatever from their treating process. I love brown. I love all things natural. Well, the wood in my background, to me, there's no better building material on planet Earth or more beautiful than wood. It's a shame to have to put paint on a doggone house. Wood. So anyway, natural materials as much as possible. More and more getting into natural, moving away from synthetics. Moving back to the old school stuff, which is proven. I just ordered from Filson. I just ordered one of their Mackinac Fields wool coats. Same thing. I'd rather a wool coat than all the fancy modern stuff. And even a wax canvas outer shell, that can just be a protection out in the wilderness. Well, I tell you, it used to be, I'd get all these fancy Gore-Tex North Face jackets and Artitech and all this fancy stuff with Gore-Tex. That stuff is not, that's great for weekend stuff or camping, but it's not designed to hold up over time. Now, I much prefer just a canvas jacket that is tough as nails, that can handle the brush and being out there, and even wax coated so it makes it a little bit water snow resistant. All right. Is even better. but that's phenomenal. And then if it rains, well, then I'll put on rain gear. That's just simple rain gear, nothing fancy to it. Even a poncho, just a good quality poncho to quickly be lightweight, to quickly have at the top of your gear. I always keep my rain gear at the top of my gear so I can, or on the outer pocket, so I can grab it immediately, right? And you just throw that on. That's enough. That's enough, Besides, I can tell you, man, you've been out hunting and stuff like that in the real wet, rainy, and in Louisiana humid conditions. There's almost no point in wearing rain gear. You're going to be just as wet underneath that thing as on top. So you can actually stay drier and warmer in snow than you can in like the wet wilderness here. I mean, there's almost no point in rain gear sometimes. So now if it's just quick burst or something, okay, throw something on, but that's where I'm saying just even a poncho or something, it can be just plenty good. Plus, you also have a lot more breathability underneath that than you do with actual closed in rain gear, So you're going to stay drier, you're going to stay drier longer. And that's what it's all about. The key to survival is staying dry, right? Bushcraft survivalism, stay dry. Another point to that with your boots, and we talked about earlier, you don't want so much constriction. I slightly like larger sizes as long as it fits properly. You don't want constriction. So that's super important. You want to stay dry. So also another key to that is instead of like wearing double socks, bring multiple socks and change them out more frequently. When you stop from working, change your socks. In the military, that was a big key in the military. We used to have a trick where we take old socks and wrap them around your neck or carry them underneath your shoulder against your body so they would dry. You would want to dry them when you're marching with using your body heat and ventilation of the air so that you could change them out. When you stopped and you took a break, you need to swap your socks. Keep those feet dry. The most important survival tool is a knife. Looking for one of my knives. I'm never far from a knife. All right. So a knife, even a good little pen knife like this, is your most important survival tool / axe. A lot of times an axe is a lot better than a knife, but a knife is amazing. If I had one thing to go with, it'd be an axe. But a knives you can do so much with and almost as much as you can with an axe, especially when it comes to utility stuff. And that's a good point on this. Notice, it's very common now on this Leatherman tool, and I love Leatherman, one thing that's very common on tools now is they have the serrated edge blades. I'm not a fan of the serrated edge blades. I like the standard flat straight blades like this on this pen knife, okay? And the reason why is you can sharpen them. They're easier to sharpen. It's much harder to sharpen a serrated edge. So you can keep this tool conditioned and sharp on a regular basis, okay? Much easier than serrated. So that's a good point. But anyway, knife is your most important survival tool, knife / axe, okay? And then saw after that. And then you always have sharpeners because they're no good without them. Not necessarily no good without them, but makes life a whole lot better if you have a way to sharpen your cutting tools, because they do lose the edge fairly quickly. You skin a deer, people use interchangeable blades now because they dull up real fast when you're using them, especially on hide and flesh and things like that. And that's not like real thick materials like wood and stuff like that, Anyway, just something to keep in mind. So your number one tool is a knife / axe, okay? Your number one piece of gear is a boot, is a quality boot. Because if these dogs don't hunt, you're dead in the water. If you don't have mobility, you can't walk, you can't work, you can't hunt, you're not going to make it very far, very long. Okay? So boots are your number one piece of survival gear. Now, again, number one piece of survival tool, not gear, tool, is knife / axe with sharpeners. All right? Your number one survival gear, clothing, shelter, which begins Shelter in the military, we talk about like the rule of threes. Okay. It's a rule of priorities. So your first priority is shelter. Your second priority is water. And your third priority is food. Okay. Now that's because you can die from exposure faster than anything else. If you don't have insulated thing, if you're wet, you can get hypothermic. Even in warm conditions, you can get hypothermic. People die of hypothermia in warm weather all the time. Okay, all the time. It's an important thing to keep track of. But number two is water. Now, this can change. If you're in an emergency dehydration situation, then water becomes your number one priority, regardless of anything. Okay, or you're not going to function. But generally, you can die of exposure before you're going to die of dehydration. Most times. There are times where that does flip. And that's why I say in my rule of threes, I start with shelter / safety, because the safety determines everything. If a bear is running after you, you're not worried about shelter, water, or food. You're worried about not becoming food. You know what I'm saying? So safety takes a priority. If you're really thirsty and dehydrated, then water becomes your first priority. That's your safety measure. So that's why I throw it in there that way. Shelter / safety. These are only general rules, you know, but it helps you, because if you need a process, okay, I'm out here, I'm in this crisis, what do I do now? That's where these rules come in. Oh yeah, okay, calm myself down, relax. What do I need to think about? You know, shelter, finding water, finding food, because you will die from exposure first is a greater danger, then water, which we don't go very long without water. I'm not going to mention specific days because that's situational specific. If you're in the desert, you can die without water, you know, very fast. In fact, there's a rule of thumb they have down there that you're on the ground in 12 hours and you're dead within 24. You know, water. That brings me to my most number one survival resource: water, water, water. Water, water, water. Number one survival tool: knife, axe, saw, sharpeners. Number one survival gear: boots. Number one survival resource: water, water, water. Then fire. Fire, fire, fire. Those are your two most important: water, fire. How to make that? Where's my fire sharpeners or my fire sparcian rods? Always have those on hand. Here I've got a lensetic compass. This is a nice big lensetic compass. I got this from the Pathfinder school. Dave Canterbury, big fan of that guy. And this is great for parabolic lens for starting fires and stuff like that if you didn't have matches and things like that. Also many other uses. There's always times you're going to have to, you know, see small things to pull out, you know, things from your skin, splinters, etc., etc. Anyway, I'm digressing. So your boot is your most important piece of gear. You got to keep those feet functioning, and you got to keep them in good health. And that means keeping them dry. That means changing out those socks often. So you want several pairs. And that also brings you to something about wool again to mention. Wool is your best friend. I'll do entire shows just on wool later, but just to touch on some of the points on wool. Wool does not take on odor the same way that natural synthetic materials do. So your socks, your feet get real stinky real fast, especially if you're working them hard. Okay. So, and they start getting real sweaty and stuff like that. So wool's great with that. You want to reduce your odor signature in the woods, and especially in bushcraft and survivalism, not just because, you know, you're around other people and you don't want to be smelling, you know, body odor all the time, but also because you want to reduce your signature from predators and from food sources when you're trying to hunt. This is very, very important. And wool is one of the best materials for reducing your body's odor and signature naturally, without all kinds of crazy synthetic stuff and sprays and all that. Wool does it naturally and is a great help. Another trick I often talk about is I should have stock in this company. I talk about it so much. I hope to have stock in JK Boots one day. In fact, I love their boots so much. I think I'm gonna end up buying like one pair of every style they make, and that's not a joke. And they're not cheap, so that's saying something. Um, but anyway, I'll swing back to that. This is a synthetic. I mean, this is a natural deodorant. It's a salt crystal deodorant, so it's natural salt crystal deodorant. And this one right here, I've talked about before on my show. Look how small this is. This Joker, brand new. I love talking about these because it's just another doggone product I absolutely love. This is what it looks like brand new. And this is what it looks like after you use it for a year. A year. I use this for a year. Now, it's not like a modern conveniences where people are like, we're so spoiled. You got to run this under some water and you got to rub it on. And you can't, it's not like a normal deodorant stick where you just like rub it 2-3 times and you're done for the day, right? These you got to work it in a little bit. You got to keep applying some water and you got to really rub it in. It takes a few minutes, all right, to actually do that. And come afternoon, about 4 o'clock, you're going to have to reapply it. All right. So you need it in the morning. You need it at about 4 in the afternoon, I found for me. You need to reapply it. But by doing that, you stay fresh and non-stinky. See, the odor is from bacteria. Okay. Well, this salt crystal, what it does is forms a salt layer that just deters the bacteria. All right. And that's why it prevents the odor. These, by the way, have no odor to them whatsoever. And when you're in the wild, hunters have used these for years. These are centuries old. I think even used in like ancient Egypt. All right. This type of salt crystal. But anyway, hunters love them because they not only deter your odor, but they don't have any fragrance of their own. So they're great for hunting. All right. When you want to reduce your odor signature, which is very important in hunting. Okay. In fact, if I had the money, which I don't, that's where modern rubber boots do help with hunting because they are great for odor restrictions, especially for your feet. So in really cold or super wet climates, they're definitely the preferred boot, or even pack boots for that matter, especially with wool linings, right? That you change out often. But that said, and just on the dry note, you want to make sure you keep these boots dry as well. And now putting them by a fire, you can dry them too fast. So be careful about that. But you do want to dry these boots. And they do make products where you can hang your boots at the end of the day that will gently heat the inside. Now, it's one of the best ways to dry out your boots. You can put them next to a wood stove or fire. Just make sure they're not too close, and you change the directions often. You don't want them getting dried out too fast, which can mess up the leather a little bit. So you be real careful, dry them out as slow as possible and not too close to direct heat. But anyway, back to the salt. Another great use, one thing you want in bushcraft is something that has multiple uses, especially if it has weight you're carrying. And that's another great thing about these salt sticks is if you cut yourself, it acts as like a aluminium salt stick. It'll take small cuts and it'll stop the bleeding. So if you get little nicks anywhere on your body, not just shaving, but these are great for quickly stopping the bleeding, which is important. All right. Very important, especially in the wilderness. And also because it's adding a layer of salt, it's also acting as a little bit of an antiseptic. And that is huge in the wilderness because the wilderness is full of bacteria. And we take this for granted living in our modern concrete jungles where we live too soft, okay, and too many conveniences and too lazy, right? So in the wilderness, you can get a little cut on your finger. It can get infected with bacteria. Next thing you know, your whole body's dealing with a septic blood infection and you're going to die. You're going to die. The best case scenario is you're going to get gangrene and have to cut your arm off or your leg off, or you're going to die. So treating wounds, even very small cuts, is utmost important. You have to treat them, you've got to clean them, and you've got to put an antiseptic on them. This can help accomplish that. But also, and just throwing it out there, tree sap from like a pine tree, resin tree, conifer, can also do that as a natural. It's very sticky, but it can also act as a natural antiseptic. All right. So I'll get back to the boots. Just wanted to throw those in there. A little extra cheddar. In Louisiana, we say everything you do in business should have a lagniappe. And lagniappe means I'm giving you a little something extra. That's the lagniappe. That's the Cajun way. Anyway, so back to the boots. We covered, so JK has different kinds of boots. Their signature boot, as I discussed earlier, is their Super Duty boot. Now, the Super Duty boot is different from this one in that it has the black Vibram sole on it. It also has a almost double thick in height heel on the boot. And that's to help. This is based on a 100-year-old design of loggers in the Northwest. And it helps for multiple things. It helps on uneven ground for you to get more traction. It helps when on logs to get more traction. It also helps. It's a little bit stiffer sole than this. This is an easier sole to bend. Not this one because it's not broken in yet, so it's a little stiff. But their Super Duty boots, the soles are more stout. They're I'm struggling for that word again. They're more stout. They're I don't want to say thicker, although they might be a little thicker. They take more time to break in because they're more stout. But that helps you when you're walking in uneven ground and you're walking up mountains. You're going to wear out the arch of your foot and you're going to wear out your calves real fast. So you need boots that are stiffer, that help with the articulation of your joints and muscles to where you're not getting fatigued. And that high heel helps with that, especially when you're on inclined. It also helps dig in more when you're on declined. So it gives you more traction. It just that higher heel gives you more traction. And so that's something that's found on all three of the different brand boots that the loggers use in the Northwest and the Northwest wilderness firefighters. Okay. And so it's been a proven design and it works. So their Super Duty boot, and I'll do another video on their Super Duty boot. I'm going to do a video on all their boots that I get access to. In fact, I'm trying to send these back and replace them with a pair of Arctic Ones boots that are going to be in black. I wish they were brown, but they're going to be in black. And I will do a show on that one too, just showing that boot and the difference between this one. So, and also this boot has the 8-inch tall leather ankle support, for lack of a better, I don't know the exact nomenclature for that. But on the Super Duty, it's 2 inches taller. It's a 10-inch tall, which I really love the support of that, especially in that stiffer cowhide leather, because it just feels like you got, really strong support for your ankles, which is super, super important in the wilderness, as I've said, especially for me. So it's a taller version than you see here by 2 inches. It's 10 inches versus this one, which is 8 inches tall. Now, I got this boot because I wanted a work boot and I wanted a everyday wear, just riding into town, but could still end up doing some stuff in the woods, but just light stuff. Everyday wear, comfortable boot. That's why I bought this one. That's why I wanted this one, and I just love the beauty of the smooth side leather, like especially on this dinosaur Bison Tatanka. But on most of JK's boots, they do use the rough side out, especially on the bottom portions of the leather, and then they still use smoother on the upper side, So, which is really nice too, because as I've come to learn, I always believe that function needs to override just personal preference on what you like and don't like. I personally like the look of this better than flesh side out, rough flesh side out, but the rough flesh side out performs much better and preserves the life of your boot better. So, hey, that wins, especially in a work boot. So I ordered a pair of the Super Duties, which I just got in, and I love them. And then I've got these, which I'm going to send back because of the ankle support. Just know I highly, highly recommend these boots. I highly, highly recommend JK Boot Company. I love these boots. But if you need wilderness, and you might not even need ankle support for just an everyday comfortable kicking around boot. But if you're like me and you have to have ankle support, then this is not going to work for you. Just keep that in mind. As beautiful and amazing as this is, I just love these boots. I'm sorry I keep saying that. I just can't help it. But that said, and like I said, no part and due to JK. They really produce phenomenal boots, and even my cowhide, high quality cowhide Super Duty boots, I just love them. They are fantastic. So they feel really good and strong and sturdy. Now, two more things I'll make and then wrap this up. Two more points. One is these are kind of designed not to really have a liner in them. All right. Like, you're real common in shoes, like my tennis shoes I'm wearing right now have come with a liner in them. And usually I replace them for a better quality liner, right? With a little more arch support and stuff. These aren't really designed. They do give a little neoprene thin liner if you want to use that, or if you want to transition to breaking these in with. But these aren't really designed to have a liner in them. And that's because the way they build the inside of this boot and the leather on the inside, all right, it has a natural arch support in their design. But on top of that, the leather is designed in the boot with your feet and your toes that it makes an imprint into the leather over time as you break them in. And it'll make like a perfect glove fit. And many, especially workers that have to spend all day working in boots, like the Northwest loggers and firefighters, they say it's like a glove fit, perfect glove fit, and becomes the most comfortable boot they've ever worn. Okay. When it breaks in properly like that. So, and these are guys that have to wear these things for 16 to 20 hours plus sometimes, and like I said, if your feet aren't good, these dogs don't hunt, you're dead in the water. All right. Most important piece of gear. And that brings me to my final point. And that is that these are not cheap boots. There's no way to cut it. These are expensive boots. I mean, they're anywhere from like $500 to $600 range. Okay. That's not cheap for anybody in today's economy. Okay. That's not cheap even for a billionaire, because the richest people I know are the most, the tightest people in the world I've ever met when it comes to spending money. And rightly so. They're smart enough that they wouldn't be billionaires if that wasn't the case. But that said, my point is this is expensive for anybody. But like I said as well, the most important piece of survival gear or bushcraft gear you can have, period, bar none, are boots, handmade boots of this quality. And that's why I recommend JK Boots. And I'm not just doing a commercial for them. They did not pay me. They did not give me any boots. I just love their product. I think they are a fantastic company. And I love natural things. The owner of JK Boots is an immigrant to our country. And you know what's brilliant about that? Back in the 1800s and stuff, when you had all the cowboys and you had all the loggers that moved out to the Northwest, and you had all these just hardcore, real Americans that built this country. It was immigrants that brought over the skill and the technique and some of the even machines that they used, like for the stitching. It was the immigrants that came here that made all these boots for all the American, badasses, for lack of a better word, that pioneered this country. So praise God for those immigrant boot makers. So you can't be more American than having an immigrant boot maker making American-made boots in America. People say I yell too much, especially my other channel. I'm a passionate guy. I've got passion, like these boots. Anyway, so yeah, they're not cheap, but it's an investment. And something I often say to people, along the lines of your most important gear being your boots, is if you're going to spend money in bushcraft and survival, don't spend it on modern trash and crap and, Gucci flodge, um, spend it on things that you're going to get the most bang for your buck for. And I always, always for years have recommended, if you spend any high dollar amount for your gear, other than, really specific tools, like good handmade knife, which I just had one made. I just had a handmade kukri made for me, and I'll do a show on that. It's a beautiful, amazing knife, and it costs $600, which is actually not a bad price for a hand forged blade, especially of that size. I mean, it's like 15, 19 inches long, and I'll do a video on that. But if you're going to spend high quality, if you're going to spend money in bushcraft, it should be on something like a bushcraft made knife, which is always going to be in that range. You might be able to find some great deals in, a little lesser, like $400 range. Mine have always been in around the $600 range. And I'll do shows on that too. But again, I recommend spending money, not spending money in a lot of places. I mean, dude, you get a boot like this from JK, and you get a Carhartt canvas jacket, and you're like, and you get a decent knife, you're like an axe with a good pack, you're like 80% of the way there, right there alone. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, and a good poncho, some outer comfy loose rain gear. But yeah, I recommend not spending a lot of money on survival camping gear. Of course, people could call me the biggest hypocrite in the world for that, because that's what I spend all my money on, or a lot of it. But a lot of that's for this channel. I'm doing gear review and stuff as well. I want to show different products and stuff. But that said, I do always recommend that if you're going to spend money in bushcraft, it should number one be on your boots, and then maybe a high quality bushcraft knife or two. That's where you should, and axes, because good quality axes. My favorite are Grand Force Burks out of Sweden. By the way, I flew there myself and trained in I took their blacksmithing course and made my own knives and axes there and tools, which was phenomenal. Love Grand Force Burks out of Sweden. They're amazing. Highly recommend them and their tools. They're the best. They're the best of the best. There's some other very good brands out there, but Grand Force Burks is my favorite. That's who I support the most. They don't pay me in any kind of way. I have a ton of their axes. I love them. They're high quality. They're actually made in a process of like Japanese samurai swords. They use that in their process with their lamination of their axes, which most high-end people do with knives. So or samurai swords. Those are laminated steel. Most axes are not laminated steel. They're just like a solid piece of tool steel, like high carbon. But anyway, so that pretty much brings us to the end of what I wanted to say about the JK boots. Just give you a little more. I think this camera angle actually has better lighting and is showing the boot better. When I have stuff on my desk laying out, I can't really show stuff, so I was using the other camera vantage point. But you can see right here, just the quality of this boot is second to none. I mean, I've never seen anything like this. I mean, this is just phenomenal. I've come to fall in love with JK boots. I really have. Also, one last point. This is the brand. I don't know if I can say this correctly. What is it? Obanoffs. Okay, Obanoffs. They used to, JK used to give you a bottle of this with their boots. There's many videos out there. I'm trying to get that. There you go. Obanoffs right there. You can screen pause on that if you want to get the name. This is the leather oil conditioner that JK recommends using on their boots. It's high quality. All right. They used to give you a bottle of this with every pair of your boots. I talked to Liz over there yesterday, who was my contact person, has been phenomenal in helping me. I mean, and I blow her up with texts, and she doesn't get upset or anything. She's very empathetic and really taking like a personal interest. And see, that's one thing about companies like JK Boots. They really take a personal interest in wanting their customers to be satisfied with their product. And to me, that makes all the difference in the world. When I call, I can get someone on the phone, I can email them. It might not get back to me right away, but they do in a fast time. And that's phenomenal, because today customer service is like gone. And I hate when I have to, even when I can get a company, I can't stay in email contact with companies. I mean, it's atrocious. I hate it. And oftentimes I refuse to work with companies when I have a choice, if that's the only way to contact the company. One thing I look for when I make an investment in a company, especially with a lot of money and multiple boots, right? I look to see, do they have someone I can get on the phone when I have a problem or if I need something? That's huge. That's huge. And I don't want to be talking to somebody in India or the Philippines about my situation. My bank now, I call to pay my bill. I got to talk to somebody in the Philippines. And I don't feel comfortable talking to people overseas about my banking information, as much as I like the Filipino people. And I do love Filipino people. They are awesome. They're awesome people. Anyway, they recommend this Obenauf's oil. So if you do get some of their boots, get some of these. In fact, what I did, I ordered a whole kit. I built out a whole bag kit of leather saddle soap, leather oil and conditioner from Obenauf's. Everything I could get from Obenauf's I did, including their brush for brushing, that horsehair brush for brushing, and even got a suede a copper bristle brush for like that's for the fleshier material, cleaning that up, getting it good, getting the dirt and grime off. And then I've got the Obenauf's oil, as you see here. And then also I've got a wax that I can wax treat them. Now, you want to clean your boots, wash them, clean them first, and you don't want to soak them. All right. This is only a surface washing. Okay. You want to let them dry completely. It's usually good to, if they're really dirty, you want to make sure you get all the dirt off of them. And when you wash them, and you set them out to dry a day if possible. Then the next day, you want to use your conditioning oil to treat them and to, it moisturizes the leather. Okay. It keeps it conditioned. So now there is a art to it. There's a balance. You don't want to over oil them. That will mess up the leather. And you certainly don't want to under oil them. That will mess up the leather. In time, it depends on the use, how much you use the boots. It will determine how often you need to condition them. They should feel them when you get them. They should stay pretty supple to the touch. All right. You should be able to get a feel for it. When it starts getting dry, you need to oil, you need to condition them. Like I said, clean them first, wash them if you have to, not completely, just the exterior. Let them dry a day, preferably. Then you add your conditioner, not too often, every couple of months. Give it, depending on how much you put them through, the work amount you put them through, and then when it's done, you really want to coat them in a wax coating. Okay, you want to coat them in a wax coating. That's what gives it its water resistant ability. And you especially want to take note of seams, because that's where you're most vulnerable, all right, to water. It's not waterproof, but it's highly water resistant. And JK has said that for their Arctic 2 boots, and that they use smooth side out on the Arctic boots, because you're in the colder, wet environment. It's not like the brush and woodland where you're constantly, dragging stuff. And the smooth side out is, Liz told me at JK Boots, is a little more water resistant. So when you're in cold, wet environments like the snow, you want smooth side out. That's the higher priority over the scratch resistance of the woodland of the rough side out. Okay. It's a little more water resistant, especially when you wax it. So, but they said that they've sent their Arctic 2 boots to Alaska and properly conditioned and waxed with wool socks. Those guys said that even in Alaska, in the working outdoors, like pipelines and stuff, their feet stayed warm and dry, warm and dry. So again, that's all natural materials instead of fancy modern stuff like Gore-Tex or imitations of that. Which, by the way, there's some new stuff out there that are saying that some of these coatings that some of these high-end companies are using for their waterproof, fancy, modern parkas that are also like $600 to $1,000 range, depending on what you're looking at, what company. Some of those materials are leaching material that's toxic to your body, your skin, and to the environment. So go do a search on that. That's something else that's very, very it's scary and something we need to take note of. All right. So anyway, those are the things I wanted to point out on these boots, and I hope I did a thorough job of trying to explain it. When I will do another show on my Super Duties that I'm very excited about, and I've ordered a pair of Arctic boots, which will take a couple of weeks to come in if I can get them. And I'll do a review on that. I'll also do reviews on more knives, especially my custom built ones and my kukri that I just got in September. I get real busy with stuff, so things get put on the back burner. But anyway, JK boots. This is the Bison OT boot. The OT boot is different than their Arctic boot or their Super Duty, and the fact that this is made to be a smaller, lighter, more comfortable sole, more comfortable arch, so that it's just a lighter, shorter, more comfortable boot. And some workers prefer just having a shorter, lighter, smaller, more comfortable boot than having the fancier, heavier duty woodland boots. I mean, think about it. If you're working like in a shop, just doing general construction on some sites, then you might want just a more comfortable boot, that's lighter, that you're in all day. But if you need something that's heavier duty, like the logging, like the woodland firefighting, maybe heavier levels of construction, then you might want to go with the Super Duty boots. Right? You're not going to be disappointed either way, I promise you. You can order them. They come in either like this, that it has no support in the toe, or you can get with a composite, lightweight but strong composite toe guard in the boots as well. So you can order them that way. They make different versions for whatever your needs are. But these are basically worker boots. But I tell you what, I wanted a pair of these just for kicking around every day, riding into town boots, but especially in transitional seasons of I can be out in the woods, or there's some snow on the ground kind of thing, in between boots. That's why I went with this style, the OT style boot. And I'll still want to buy, I'll probably end up ordering a pair similar to, it's going to be just like this, but it's going to be cowhide instead of bison. And it's going to be the roughed out leather on the bottoms just to make them more durable. But I'm going to go with the same sole as this, the same height as this, the 8-inch, as opposed to heavier duty 10-inch. And I will probably get a composite toe in it so I can use it as a work boot. But it's just going to be more of an everyday, more comfortable boot that's lighter. And then I've got my heavy duty boots, and then I've got my Arctic boots as well for when the temperature really drops, or if I'm going hunting in a later season, that kind of thing. And then really beyond that, I got pack boots. I got sorrel pack boots. Love them. They're fantastic. However, if I would really like to get a pair of the Arctic 2 boots as well eventually. So we'll see about that, but that would only be when I'm sitting still kind of thing. So that would be the last boot I buy. I think the down to 0 degrees in the Arctic 1 would be just fine for me, especially if I'm moving, if I'm working, because my feet are hot. So even below 0, I should be fine in that. Besides, when it's below 0, I'm not staying outside long anyway. It's kind of like here in the South, we run from air conditioner to air conditioner. Well, at that time, you're running to heater in a sense, So I'm not staying a huge time out in that. And if I was, pack boots. But if I needed a work boot where it is going to be below 0, I would definitely get those Arctic 2 boots, because there might be a lot of more standing around. In fact, I'd bring both boots, because if I'm moving a lot, I'd use the Arctic 1s. If I'm in a situation where I got to be still working in a general location, I'm not moving around a lot, I'll go put on those other boots. That's another thing to point out. Always try to keep your boots as dry as possible and let them air out as much as possible. It's recommended, if possible, you have 2 pairs of these, your work boots, so that one pair dries out while you use the other pair, especially if you're in wet environments. Feet sweat a lot. If your boots get wet a lot, you really need a second pair. Besides, I love that too, because if one pair ever goes down, you got to, the rule in the military is 2 is 1, 1 is none, and 3 is better. So I try to live by some of those military adages that they, drilled in our heads, because they're proven and they work, just like these boots from JK. So God bless everybody. Pray for our country, and pray for each other. God, family, country. These are the most important things. And community. We need to return to a sense of community in God if we're gonna maintain the values that this country was founded on. All right. Take care, and God bless y'all. And until next time.